Chapter 1: A Chance Encounter. Late in the afternoon, the city lights shimmered, but they couldn't dispel the gloom of the persistent drizzle. Marcus pulled up the collar of his coat and walked quickly through the crowded streets, eager to return home after a long day of work. His tired steps carried him past the hurried crowd, the honking cars, and the street vendors calling out their final offers, all blending into the familiar symphony of the city at night. As a young millionaire, Marcus Johnson owned everything many people dreamed of: a successful career, luxury cars, and a magnificent mansion in the heart of the city. But at this moment, his mind wasn't on any of that. All he could think about was a hot bath and the soft embrace of his sofa waiting for him at home. Suddenly, Marcus froze in the middle of the street. He patted his vest pocket, empty. His heart began to race as a wave of worry surged through him. His black leather wallet was gone. "Must have been when I bought coffee," he muttered, turning around and weaving through the crowd, clinging to the faint hope that he might find it. Just as Marcus was about to give up, a soft voice called out from behind him, "Sir, you dropped this." Marcus turned around. Standing before him was a woman with disheveled hair and tattered clothes, soaked from the rain. She held out his wallet with trembling hands. Marcus stared in surprise. The woman looked exhausted, but her eyes shone with sincerity. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." Marcus awkwardly took the wallet and checked inside. Nothing was missing. "It's nothing. It wasn't mine," she replied with a faint smile, as if returning it was the most natural thing to do. Marcus felt something unfamiliar stir within him. In a city where everyone rushed to care for themselves, this woman's actions caught him off guard. He took a closer look at her worn-out clothes, the frayed shoes barely holding together. Raindrops slid down her tangled hair, and her face bore the marks of fatigue. "Have you eaten anything yet?" Marcus asked, feeling an unexpected surge of compassion. The woman shook her head slightly. Marcus glanced at the Bentley parked nearby, then turned back to her. "Would you like to come home with me, take a hot shower, and have something to eat?" Marcus hesitated slightly, unsure of how she would react. The woman's eyes flashed with hesitation, filled with caution. "I don't want to be a bother." "It's not a bother at all. I owe you a great deal," Marcus replied with a gentle smile, his voice filled with sincerity. After a few moments of silence, the woman nodded, her voice soft. "A hot bath. That sounds wonderful." Marcus smiled, opened the car door, and gestured for her to get in. As the luxury car glided through the misty streets, Julia, the homeless woman, gazed out at the city through the fogged-up glass, feeling as though she had stepped into a strange dream. Meanwhile, Marcus had no idea that this encounter would change both of their lives forever. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today we bring you a heartwarming tale. Let us know which city you're tuning in from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more meaningful stories. Chapter 2: The House and Faded Memories. The Bentley glided slowly along the cobblestone road, its headlights casting a warm glow over the quiet neighborhood of Marcus's estate. Julia sat silently in the passenger seat, her hands tightly clasped, feeling the stark contrast between her world and the man sitting beside her. The car stopped in front of a large wrought iron gate. As it slowly opened, Julia couldn't hide the astonishment in her eyes. Before her stood a magnificent house with classic European architecture. Rows of carefully trimmed trees lined the path leading to an intricately carved wooden door. Light spilled from within, illuminating the vast garden that stretched out in front. Julia instinctively took a step back as Marcus opened the car door for her. You live here?" she stammered, her voice so soft it nearly dissolved into the air. Marcus smiled gently, as if this grand estate was nothing out of the ordinary. "It's just a house. Come in. Don't worry." Julia stepped inside cautiously, feeling as though she had just set foot into another world. As the door closed behind her, she stood still, overwhelmed by the luxury of the interior. The high ceiling soared above her, adorned with a massive crystal chandelier that hung like a piece of art. Classical oil paintings lined the hallways, while the marble floors shimmered under the soft lights. Everything was so immaculate that Julia hesitated to take another step. "I don't think I should be here." Julia lowered her head, her voice trailing off in discomfort. Marcus looked at her, his eyes gentle and understanding. Julia, you did something good today. Consider this a small thank you. You deserve it. After a moment of hesitation, Julia nodded slightly. All right, just for a little while. Marcus gestured to a nearby maid. Please show her to the guest bathroom. The maid bowed politely and led Julia upstairs. As she walked down the long hallway, Julia felt the unfamiliarity of her surroundings pressing in. When the bathroom door opened, Julia froze. Before her was a bathroom larger than the fanciest hotel rooms she had only seen on television. A marble bathtub sat beneath the soft glow of the lights, with neatly folded white towels resting beside it. Julia reached out hesitantly, her fingertips grazing the cool marble surface. Feel free to take your time. If you need anything, just call for me, the maid said softly before quietly stepping out. As the door closed, Julia stood there for a long moment, unable to believe what was happening. Hot water cascaded down her skin, washing away the cold, the dirt, and the exhaustion she had carried for months. Julia closed her eyes, letting the water cleanse everything, but old memories began to surface. Once Julia had been a strong woman. She owned a small clothing boutique downtown. Her mother, whom Julia admired greatly, often told customers that her daughter was her greatest pride. Julia recalled the difficult early days of opening her shop, but after years of hard work, she had built a small brand with loyal customers. Life wasn't lavish, but it was full and peaceful. Everything changed when her mother passed away after a sudden illness. The loss shattered Julia. The man she trusted most, her partner, left her during that time, not only abandoning her, but also taking all the savings she had worked so hard to accumulate for the store. Left with nothing, Julia lost her shop, her home, and ultimately her faith in life. When she opened her eyes, Julia realized that tears had mingled with the flowing water streaming down her face. Julia stepped out of the bathroom, wrapping herself in the soft robe Marcus had left for her. She descended the stairs, her bare feet brushing against the cool wooden floor. Marcus sat on the sofa in the living room, his gaze lifting from his laptop as Julia appeared. In that moment, Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, as if something familiar had just crossed his mind. "You look different," Marcus said after a brief pause. Julia smiled faintly, though a trace of embarrassment flickered in her eyes. "Probably just because I'm clean," she joked, trying to ease the awkwardness. Marcus didn't laugh. He stood and stepped closer. "What's your name?" "Julia." Marcus's face stiffened, a subtle yet noticeable shift in his expression. "Julia, what's your last name?" "Julia Bennett." Marcus froze. The name echoed in his mind like a forgotten puzzle piece that had finally been found. "You're Julia Bennett, from Hillside Middle School?" Julia looked up at Marcus, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Yes. How do you know that?" Marcus chuckled softly, but there was a hint of emotion trembling beneath his voice. "Because I'm Marcus Johnson, the boy you used to protect from bullies all through middle school." Chapter 3. Recognition. The past returns. Marcus stood there, gazing at Julia with eyes filled with astonishment and emotion. For a few fleeting seconds, the world around them seemed to pause. "Julia, is it really you? Don't you recognize me?" Marcus's voice trembled, as if he couldn't believe what was unfolding before him. Julia furrowed her brow, confusion flashing in her eyes. She studied Marcus carefully, as though she was rifling through the dusty drawers of forgotten memories. "Marcus? You mean Marcus Johnson?" Julia spoke slowly, her lips quivering slightly. Marcus nodded, a faint smile curling at the corner of his lips. "It's me, Marcus." Julia stood frozen, her wide eyes reflecting disbelief. Like puzzle pieces snapping into place, fragments of memories began flooding back, rewinding to a time when they were just children. The image of a thin boy with thick glasses, always walking with his head down in the long corridors of their middle school, appeared vividly in Julia's mind. Marcus had been that timid boy, frequently teased by the bigger, rowdier kids. Julia, the girl with long brown hair and bright eyes, was the only one who neither feared nor avoided Marcus when he was bullied. Instead, she consistently stood up for him, ready to confront anyone who dared to harm Marcus. She recalled one particular incident when Marcus was cornered by a group of boys in the schoolyard, simply because he wore worn-out shoes. Julia had rushed over, placing herself protectively in front of him, and firmly declaring, "If you want to mess with him, you'll have to go through me first." From that day on, Julia became Marcus's confidant and his greatest source of strength. They grew inseparable, sharing late study sessions, school field trips, and the dreams they whispered about during their youth. Even though Marcus was shy and quiet, he felt safe whenever Julia was by his side. She was the one friend who believed in him, encouraging him whenever he felt lost. Julia remembered one summer afternoon during their final year of middle school. Marcus had sat alone on the steps behind the school, clutching his worn-out backpack. "You can't keep living like this, Marcus," Julia had said as she sat beside him, her eyes filled with determination. Marcus sighed softly, adjusting his glasses before replying in a faint voice. "I don't know how to change. Maybe I was just born this way." Julia smiled, her eyes gleaming under the fading sunlight. "No, Marcus, I believe you can change. You can do anything if you set your mind to it, and I'll always be here to support you." Those simple words ignited a spark within Marcus. It became the driving force that pushed him to overcome his insecurities, eventually shaping him into the successful man he was today. Returning to the present, Julia looked at Marcus, tears welling in her eyes. "I can't believe it. Is it really you, Marcus?" Julia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Marcus smiled gently, nodding. "I never imagined we'd meet again. Under these circumstances." Julia lowered her gaze, suddenly feeling self-conscious about her current state. I'm sorry for how I look. I'm not the same as I was back then." She fidgeted, pulling the robe Marcus had given her tighter around her. Marcus shook his head, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Julia, you were the one who helped me through the toughest times of my life. Now it's my turn to help you." Julia bit her lower lip, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Marcus, you really don't have to do this. I've changed." Marcus met her gaze, his voice steady and warm. "Julia, you haven't changed. To me, you're still the girl who stood up for me all those years ago. And I owe you, more than you know." The two stood quietly in Marcus's lavish living room, but in that moment, time seemed to stop. They were no longer Marcus the millionaire and Julia the homeless woman. They were simply Marcus and Julia, as they had been in those distant school days. Chapter 4. Reunion, Years of Loss. Julia sat across from Marcus in his spacious living room. The room was quiet, with only the faint patter of rain tapping against the window. The cup of tea Marcus had placed in front of her had long gone cold, untouched. Julia's gaze dropped to the table, her thin hands clasped tightly together, a habit she had developed whenever she felt anxious. Marcus sat silently, his eyes gentle yet filled with concern he couldn't quite hide. "Julia, can you tell me what happened?" Marcus asked softly, his voice calm but careful, as if afraid to reopen old wounds. Julia remained silent for a moment, her eyes lingering on the flickering flames in the fireplace. The warmth from the fire filled the room, but did little to dispel the cold lingering within her heart. She drew in a deep breath as though gathering the courage to confront her past. "Everything started to fall apart after my mother passed away." Julia's voice was as light as a breeze, yet every word felt like a sharp cut to Marcus's heart. "My mother was everything to me. When she was gone, I lost my way. The shop kept running, but I didn't have the strength to care for it like before. Everything slowly slipped away, and I couldn't stop it." Marcus nodded slightly, remembering the stories Julia used to tell about her mother when they were younger. He had always known how much Julia's mother meant to her, the foundation of her life. He could only imagine the pain of such a loss. Julia continued, her voice fading to a whisper. "At the time, I put my trust in the one person I thought would never leave me. My boyfriend." Marcus looked up, noticing how Julia's expression darkened as she spoke of memories she likely wished to forget. "At first, he promised to help me get the shop back on track. I believed him, but it was all lies." Julia gave a faint, bitter laugh, but Marcus could see the lingering pain and resentment in her eyes. He didn't just take my money. He left me the moment I fell into debt. The shop closed. The debts piled up. I lost everything. And eventually I turned to alcohol, hoping to forget it all. Marcus's hands tightened into fists, his gaze darkening. He couldn't believe that Julia, the strong, resilient girl he had admired, had endured such betrayal and hardship. I wandered everywhere, with no place to go. Friends drifted away, and eventually, I became homeless. Julia let out a soft sigh, but this time it wasn't one of despair. It was one of acceptance. You know, Marcus, the scariest part of living on the streets isn't hunger or cold. It's the feeling of being forgotten. I walked past hundreds of people every day, but no one stopped. They looked at me like I was invisible. Marcus remained silent, unsure of how to respond. Although Julia spoke with a calm demeanor, Marcus could sense the depth of the wounds hidden beneath her words. His heart ached, not because of how Julia looked now, but because he saw a different Julia, one who had once been strong but was now burdened by loneliness and pain. "Why didn't you come find me?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling. Julia shook her head gently. "How could I? You had built a good life for yourself. I didn't want to bother you or drag you into my mess." Marcus held her gaze, his eyes soft yet unwavering. His life, despite its wealth and success, had long felt empty, as though something crucial was missing, something he couldn't quite place. And now, as he looked at Julia, he realized what he had been searching for all along was sitting right in front of him. "You could never be a bother, Julia. No matter where you are or what's happened, I'm still your friend." Julia lifted her head, meeting Marcus's eyes with tears pooling at the corners of her own. I forgot what it felt like to have someone believe in me." Marcus smiled softly, his expression resolute. "Then let me remind you, I'm here now, and I won't let you go through this alone." The room fell silent, but for the first time in years, Julia felt warmth seep into the cracks of her heart. At that moment, sitting across from Marcus, Julia no longer felt like the homeless woman wandering the streets. She felt like Julia from years ago, the girl Marcus had once admired and believed in. And perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Are you still following this story on our Soul Stories channel? Comment pizza to let us know you're still with us. Chapter 5. The Road to Recovery, A New Beginning. The early morning sunlight streamed through the large glass windows of Marcus's living room. Julia sat on the sofa, her gaze distant as she looked out at the sunlit garden beyond. Despite having slept soundly in the warmth of Marcus's home, her heart still felt heavy. Marcus entered the room carrying a cup of hot tea, which he gently placed on the table in front of her. He sat down across from Julia, his eyes filled with warmth but also firm determination. "Julia, I think it's time for you to start over," Marcus said softly. Julia looked up, but her eyes darted away, unable to meet his gaze. "Marcus, I don't know if I can—" Marcus cut her off, his voice steady and persuasive. "You can. I know you can. But you don't have to do it alone." Julia sat quietly. She knew Marcus was right. Life on the streets had driven her to rely on alcohol to numb the pain, but if she truly wanted to start anew, she had to let go of those habits. That afternoon, Marcus drove Julia to a private rehabilitation center just outside the city. The facility was surrounded by lush green trees, a stark contrast to the noisy and chaotic places Julia had grown accustomed to. Before stepping through the gates, Julia turned to Marcus, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I'm scared. What if I fail again?" Marcus gently took her hand, his eyes reflecting unwavering patience and belief. "If you fall, I'll be here to help you get back up. But I believe this time, you won't." Julia gave a slight nod. The first few days at the center were far from easy. Julia battled relentless cravings for alcohol, splitting headaches, and vivid nightmares that jolted her awake in the middle of the night. Each morning, she sat by the window of her treatment room for hours, wondering if she was on the right path. There were times when the isolation and fear overwhelmed her, pulling her back toward the brink of despair. But every time she felt like giving up, Marcus was there. He wasn't just providing financial support for her treatment, he became a constant source of emotional encouragement. "I'll visit you every week, I promise." And he kept that promise. Every weekend, Marcus showed up, bringing books Julia loved, small treats she missed, and stories about life beyond the walls of the rehab center. "You're not alone, Julia." His presence became the light that guided her through the darkest days. Slowly, Julia began to change. She joined group therapy sessions where people shared their experiences. For the first time in years, Julia felt she wasn't alone in her struggles. Following Marcus's advice, she started journaling her thoughts in a small notebook. "Write everything down, Julia. It's a way to face yourself," Marcus had told her. Marcus was more than just an old friend. He was the person who pushed Julia to reflect on herself and confront the shadows of her past. Little by little, Julia learned to let go of the guilt and forgive herself. Each morning she felt a shift, a subtle but powerful transformation in her heart. "I'm starting to believe that maybe I really can start over, Marcus," Julia said one day. Marcus smiled, his eyes full of pride. "I've always believed in you, Julia, from the day you stood up for me in middle school until now." Julia's journey to reclaim her life wasn't quick or simple, but as each day passed, Marcus saw the light returning to her eyes, the same light of the strong-willed girl he once knew. 3 months later, Julia completed her treatment. As she stepped out of the rehab center, she took a deep breath, savoring the fresh air she hadn't appreciated in so long. Marcus stood waiting just outside the gates, just as he had promised. "Are you ready to start a new chapter?" Julia looked at Marcus and smiled softly, the smile of someone who had been reborn. "I think I am." Chapter 6. Love Blossoms from Friendship. The warm rays of spring sunlight began to weave through the streets, slowly melting away the cold that had lingered through the long winter months. Julia had completed her treatment and was starting a new life. Though challenges still lay ahead, each day felt like a small step toward regaining normalcy. Marcus kept his promise. He stayed by Julia's side, not just as an old friend, but as a companion who never strayed far. A growing closeness. Meeting up became a routine for them. On quiet weekend afternoons, they often found themselves at a small cafe tucked away on a peaceful street corner. Julia liked sitting by the window, watching the bustling streets outside where people hurried by, each carrying their own untold stories. "Do you remember? This cafe used to be a little bakery we'd stop by after school," Marcus said, stirring his coffee gently. Julia laughed, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. "How could I forget? You always ordered croissants, and I'd get apple pie every time." Marcus chuckled. "I can't believe you remember that much detail." "How could I forget a childhood friend?" Julia replied, her voice warm. Their conversation stretched into the evenings, weaving together memories from school days, with stories of work and life now. They took walks in the park, watched sunsets by the lake, and sometimes simply sat together in silence. Being with Marcus felt effortless for Julia, as if she could let her guard down and simply be herself. Marcus, on the other hand, began to notice something. Julia was no longer the mischievous girl from their youth. She had grown into a resilient, graceful woman, shaped by her experiences. Despite everything she had endured, Julia retained the strength and kindness that Marcus had always admired. Every time Julia laughed, Marcus's heart beat faster. He often caught himself quietly watching her, wondering when his feelings had shifted beyond friendship. He began to notice the smallest things. The way Julia tucked her hair behind her ear when she felt shy, how intently she listened when he spoke, and the softness in her eyes when she watched the world around her. One afternoon, as they strolled through the park, Marcus suddenly stopped. "Julia, I've been thinking about something." Marcus hesitated, his gaze meeting hers. Julia turned to him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. But before Marcus could continue, Julia quickly looked away, the smile on her lips fading. "Marcus, don't," Julia whispered. Marcus frowned. "Why not, Julia?" She remained silent for a moment before speaking softly, her voice heavy with emotion. "I know what you're about to say, Marcus, but I don't think I deserve it." Marcus stood still, taken aback. "Julia, why would you say that?" Julia turned to face him, tears pooling in her eyes. Marcus, I was a failure. I lost everything. I wandered the streets, and no matter how much I try, I can't erase that part of me. Marcus gently took her hand, his eyes unwavering. Julia, you've been through things most people couldn't imagine, but that's what makes you strong. I don't care about your past. I care about the person standing in front of me now. Julia lowered her head and tears began to stream down her face. I'm scared. If you knew everything, you wouldn't see me the same way. Marcus softly lifted her chin, his gaze locking with hers. I already know everything, Julia, and I'm still here. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. In that moment, Julia felt the sincerity in every word Marcus spoke. Despite the lingering fear, his warmth made her feel safe, as if, for the first time in years, she wasn't alone. Chapter 7. Overcoming the Past. Time passed and Julia and Marcus continued to see each other. Though their bond grew deeper with each passing day, Julia couldn't shake the lingering fear in her heart. Despite Marcus's kindness and affection, she couldn't stop thinking about the gap between her past and the man Marcus had become, a successful businessman living in a grand estate. Marcus noticed. He saw the flicker in Julia's eyes whenever they were together, happiness tinged with hesitation. He didn't blame her. Marcus understood that Julia needed time to learn how to trust herself again, to believe she was worthy of love. Whenever Julia steered away from conversations that touched on their feelings, Marcus simply smiled and gently reminded her, Your past doesn't define you, Julia. I love who you are now, not what happened before. But Marcus knew that words alone weren't enough. Julia needed something more, a moment powerful enough to pull her out of the shadows of her past. One weekend afternoon, Marcus drove to Julia's home and extended an invitation. It's a beautiful day. Let's go for a walk? Julia agreed with a soft nod, but she hadn't anticipated where Marcus was taking her. Hillside Middle School, the place they had both attended as children. As they walked through the old iron gates, Julia hesitated for a brief moment. Childhood memories crept back slowly, unraveling piece by piece. The long hallways, the basketball court, and the grassy field where they used to sit and talk. Marcus smiled, catching the flicker of nostalgia and surprise on Julia's face. Do you remember? This is where you saved me countless times. Julia chuckled lightly, though there was still a hint of shyness in her voice. You were so timid back then. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Marcus stopped in front of the basketball court, a place that had once been a battlefield for mischievous schoolboys. His eyes softened as he turned to Julia. Julia, you were always the strongest person I knew. You stood up for me when no one else did. Now it's my turn to do the same for you. Julia looked up, her gaze meeting Marcus's. She could feel the sincerity and unwavering conviction in his words. Marcus, I don't want you to feel like you have to carry my burdens. Marcus shook his head gently and took a step closer, his hands softly wrapping around hers. You're not a burden, Julia. You're someone I care deeply about. I want to stand by you, not because I feel obligated, but because I love you. Julia's eyes widened in surprise, tears beginning to gather at the corners. Marcus smiled, his expression tender but steady. I've waited a long time to say this, but I don't want you to feel pressured. I just want you to remember one thing. You deserve happiness, Julia, and I'll be here, waiting until you're ready. Julia couldn't hold back her tears any longer. For the first time in years, warmth spread through her heart, breaking down the walls she had built around herself. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for not giving up on me. Marcus gently pulled Julia into his arms, as if to silently promise her once more. He wouldn't let her go again. That day, standing together in their old schoolyard, Julia felt the chains of her past slowly loosen. Her past no longer felt like a weight dragging her down. Instead, it became a part of her story, a story she and Marcus would continue to write together. Chapter 8. A Heartfelt Proposal. The sun dipped slowly toward the horizon, casting a golden hue over the old schoolyard. Julia and Marcus sat on the same bench they had occupied countless times after school. The gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and the rustling leaves seemed to whisper stories from the years gone by. Julia rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, feeling the rare peace she had long sought. Her worries and insecurities gradually faded, replaced by warmth and trust in his presence. Marcus gently took Julia's hand, his eyes drifting toward the basketball court where young boys once played. "Julia!" Marcus spoke softly, his voice barely louder than the wind. Julia looked up, curiosity flickering in her eyes as she met his tender gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about you, about us, and everything we've been through." Julia smiled gently, squeezing his hand. "I know. I've been thinking the same." Marcus drew in a deep breath, then unexpectedly stood. Before Julia could react, he knelt on one knee in the middle of the schoolyard, the very place where Julia had once stood between him and the bullies more than 10 years ago. Julia froze, her heart pounding. Marcus's eyes locked onto hers, glowing with sincerity and certainty. From his jacket pocket, he retrieved a small velvet box and slowly opened it. Inside lay a simple yet elegant silver ring, reflecting the warm light of the setting sun. "Julia Bennett, you saved me during those difficult childhood years. You were my best friend, and now you are the woman I love and cherish more than anyone." Julia brought her hand to her mouth, her eyes shimmering under the twilight. "I can't imagine my life without you by my side. You've been a part of me for so long. Today I want to ask, will you walk this life with me, not just now, but forever?" Marcus paused, his voice softening even further. "Julia, will you marry me?" Julia sat still, as if time itself had slowed. She looked at Marcus, her childhood friend, the one who had stood by her through her darkest days. The memories of their youth flooded back. The timid, scrawny Marcus she had once protected now knelt before her, waiting for an answer, his eyes filled with hope. Tears welled in Julia's eyes and began streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't hold back the overwhelming emotions. "Marcus, are you sure?" Julia's voice trembled as she spoke, barely able to contain her feelings. Marcus smiled softly, his gaze unwavering. "I've never been more certain of anything." Julia began to cry, but this time they were tears of joy. She nodded repeatedly, unable to form words beyond the radiant smile and tear-filled eyes. "Yes, I will, Marcus." Marcus's face lit up, as if the entire world had just been set aglow. With gentle care, he slipped the ring onto her finger. The ring, though simple, felt like a profound symbol of their love and unbreakable bond. Marcus rose to his feet, pulling Julia into his arms. They embraced tightly, standing in the schoolyard that had witnessed so many of their memories. "Thank you, Julia, for saying yes to being a part of my life." Julia smiled, resting her head against Marcus's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "I should be the one thanking you, Marcus, for standing by me when I felt most unworthy. I didn't think I deserved this happiness, but I promise, I'll treasure it every day." As the sun set behind the trees, they stood hand in hand as if time had never passed. And in that moment, they both knew. This was just the beginning of a new journey, a journey of two people who had once lost each other, but had finally found their way back. Chapter 9. A Happy Ending. The Wedding and Everlasting Happiness. The radiant autumn sun bathed the small garden in golden light, where Marcus and Julia's intimate yet heartfelt wedding was taking place. The garden, nestled behind Marcus's mansion, was the very spot where Julia had first stepped into his life again, the day she returned his wallet. The space was adorned with strings of twinkling lights and delicate white flowers scattered along the pathway. Rows of simple wooden chairs lined each side, draped with soft silk ribbons. It wasn't extravagant, nor was the guest list extensive, but the wedding overflowed with sincerity and the warmth of everyone present. Julia wore a simple yet elegant wedding dress. The gown, light and pure, mirrored her essence, gentle but full of resilience. As she walked slowly down the aisle, tears welled in her eyes as she saw the familiar faces of loved ones smiling back at her. In the front row sat Marcus and Julia's old friends from middle school. But what moved Julia the most was the presence of those who had stood by her during her time in rehab. These were the people who had shared her most challenging moments, and now they stood beside her, witnessing this new chapter of joy. At the end of the aisle, Marcus waited with bright eyes, his gaze never leaving Julia as she approached. When she finally reached him, he gently took her hand and whispered, "I told you, you're the one I always wanted by my side." Julia smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. "And I feel the same, Marcus." As they exchanged vows beneath the golden sunlight, applause and quiet sobs of happiness echoed through the garden. After the wedding, Marcus devoted himself to helping Julia realize a dream she had long left behind, opening a small clothing boutique. The shop, tucked away on a quiet neighborhood corner, wasn't large, but it was just the right size for Julia to begin anew. She carefully selected each piece, pouring her heart in designing and curating collections with the same passion she once had. Above the small storefront, Julia hung a simple sign that read, "Where every beginning matters." Julia's shop became more than just a place to buy clothes. It became a space where she listened, shared, and connected with others who, like her, had once lost their way. Some customers had been homeless, while others had recently left rehab. Julia welcomed them, offering advice and sometimes even a helping hand. She became a beacon of hope in the community, a testament to the fact that people can rise from the ashes of their past if given the right support and a little belief. Marcus continued his work, but every afternoon, he would visit Julia's shop. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments, but this time as husband and wife. Julia often told Marcus, "Life isn't always easy, but as long as we have each other, I believe we can overcome anything." Marcus would nod, holding her hand tightly. "And I'll always be by your side, just like you once stood by mine." Together, they built a life that was simple yet full of happiness. There was no need for lavish displays, just the joy of waking up next to each other, building their future hand in hand, and spreading kindness to those around them. Sometimes all it takes is a hand reaching out at the right moment to dispel the darkness, making room for light and hope. Julia once protected Marcus as a child, and in return, Marcus became the guiding light that led Julia out of her darkest days. Their love stood as a living reminder that kindness and genuine love can transform lives, pulling people from the depths of despair to the heights of happiness. Thank you for following this story. Please rate it from 1 to 5 stars, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Soul Stories channel. Chapter 1. The Cold and Powerful Millionaire. New York, the city of skyscrapers and streets that never sleep, where dreams can either come true or shatter in an instant. Amidst the bustling life and endless luxury, Jack Harrington is a name that cannot be overlooked. The young CEO of Harrington Tech, a multi-billion-dollar tech conglomerate, frequently graces the covers of financial magazines, serving as an ideal role model for ambitious youth. Jack has it all: fame, wealth, and power. But behind the facade of success lies a loneliness no one knows about. Lavish parties and high society gatherings fail to fill the void within him. His penthouse, perched atop a high-rise with a view of New York's dazzling nightscape, greets him with nothing but cold walls when he steps inside. In Jack's world, there is no room for love or emotions. He is practical, even rigid. To him, everything can be measured in numbers, until a financial crisis strikes, pushing Harrington Tech to the brink of collapse. Shareholders begin applying pressure, partners gradually withdraw, and faith in Jack's leadership wavers more than ever. "You need a stable image, Jack." The words of Thomas Harrington, Jack's father and the former chairman of the company, still echo in his mind. Thomas believes Jack needs a woman by his side to reassure the public and investors. A solid family will restore shareholder confidence. The idea irritates Jack. To him, marriage is just a political game he has no time for. But as the pressure mounts, Jack knows he cannot avoid it forever. One winter morning, Jack steps into a small cafe on the corner of Greenwich, a place he often visits to find a moment of peace amid the city's chaos. Outside, light snow falls, while inside, the warm aroma of coffee fills the air. Amelia Dawson, a waitress with soft brown curls, bright eyes, and a gentle smile, is busy with her work. She is unlike the women Jack usually encounters. No designer dresses, no dazzling jewelry, just a simple apron and worn canvas shoes. Jack sits quietly in the corner, observing. It is his habit, watching everything without making his presence known. While Amelia serves a nearby table, an elderly man fumbles with his cup of coffee, accidentally spilling it. Amelia quickly steps over, gently cleaning the mess and chatting with the man, her eyes radiating a rare sincerity and warmth. Jack is surprised by Amelia's patience as she helps the elderly man rearrange his belongings, even offering him a free pastry. The sight causes Jack to pause. There is something different about Amelia, something he cannot name, but it makes it impossible to look away. A week later, they meet again. That day, the cafe is quieter than usual. Jack overhears a conversation between Amelia and her coworker. My mom is seriously ill, and the hospital bills are too high. I just wish I could get more hours to take care of her. Jack doesn't think much of it at first, but when his eyes meet Amelia's worried gaze, he knows he is about to make a decision even he cannot fully understand. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today we bring you a heartwarming tale. Let us know which city you're tuning in from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more meaningful stories. Chapter 2. The Proposal for a Contract Marriage. The small cafe on Greenwich Street had always been Amelia Dawson's haven, a place of peace amidst the chaos of life. But that morning, the usual calm was shattered by an unexpected conversation. Jack Harrington sat at his usual table near the window, his expression cold and focused, though his eyes never left her. Amelia noticed but chose to ignore it. To her, Jack was just another wealthy customer, the kind of man she rarely interacted with beyond serving coffee. As Amelia placed a cup of coffee on Jack's table, she was startled when he called her back. Amelia! She froze, surprised to hear him say her name. Yes, sir? Amelia smiled politely, wondering if something was wrong with his order. Jack didn't answer immediately. He watched her for a long moment, as if weighing a decision. Finally, he spoke words that left Amelia stunned. I want to propose marriage for 6 months. The tray in Amelia's hand nearly slipped. I'm sorry. What? She let out a nervous laugh, thinking this must be some sort of joke. Jack leaned back in his chair, his sharp gaze unwavering and devoid of humor. I'm serious, he replied, his voice calm and firm. I need a wife, but only in name. After 6 months, you'll receive a sum of money sufficient to cover your family's needs. This is a contract, not a relationship. The air around them seemed to grow heavier. Amelia didn't know how to respond. Marry a wealthy stranger for money? The thought had never crossed her mind. Why me? She asked, suspicion evident in her tone. Jack placed his cup down, locking eyes with her. Because you're different from other women. You're not driven by money or status. I need someone genuine, someone who won't be swayed by appearances or fame. Amelia forced an awkward smile and shook her head. I think you're mistaken. I'm just a waitress. Hardly the right person to marry a millionaire. Jack's gaze didn't waver. You need money, don't you? I know your mother is ill, and hospital bills aren't cheap. I also overheard you mention that your sister may have to drop out of school due to your family's financial situation. His words hit Amelia like a dagger. She took a step back, feeling as if her privacy had been invaded. You have no right to... I don't mean to offend, Jack interrupted, his voice softening slightly. I just want to help. This is mutually beneficial. You get the money you need, and I gain the stability that my family and shareholders expect. Amelia remained silent. Jack's proposal was undeniably tempting, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that accepting it would mean stepping into dangerous territory. Days passed, but Amelia couldn't stop thinking about Jack's offer. Her mother lay in bed, her complexion pale and breathing shallow. Each day, the hospital bills mounted. Her younger sister, Sophie, had taken on extra shifts, sacrificing her studies to support the family. Amelia knew she had to do something, but was marrying Jack the right solution? That evening, as she sat beside her mother, the older woman reached out, her voice frail. Amelia, you've done too much for this family already. I don't want you to sacrifice yourself for us. Amelia smiled faintly, though tears welled in her eyes. I'll find a way, Mom. Don't worry. The next morning, Amelia appeared at Jack's office. As she entered, Jack stood by the large window overlooking the city. He turned when he heard the door open, his gray eyes watching her carefully. I agree, Amelia said, her voice steady though her hands clenched at her sides. I'll sign the contract. Jack nodded slightly unsurprised. Good. You won't regret it. A few days later, Amelia moved into Jack's estate. The mansion was nothing like the world she knew. Grand with towering doors, spiraling staircases, and glittering chandeliers. It was the kind of place Amelia had only seen in movies or glossy magazines. But as she stepped inside, she realized that the lives of the wealthy weren't as glamorous as they seemed. Jack lived alone, and despite the mansion's beauty, it felt cold and empty, much like its owner. Chapter 3. Contract Marriage and the Pressures. Jack handed Amelia a list of events they would need to attend together. It's all for appearances, he explained. You just need to show up and smile. After 6 months, it will all be over. Amelia nodded, unaware that the next 6 months would be far from simple. The wedding of Jack and Amelia took place on a cold winter afternoon at a luxurious estate on the outskirts of New York. Under the glow of golden lights, Amelia wore a simple yet elegant white gown. Despite her stunning appearance, anxiety filled her heart. Outside, the guests were prominent businessmen, politicians, and elite figures from Jack's circles. Curious and disdainful glances followed her as Amelia stepped out of the limousine and into the grand hall. Is that the cafe waitress? A woman whispered to her husband, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Jack certainly has an eye for quality, the man chuckled. The murmurs continued, echoing even though no one dared to confront Amelia directly. But she could feel the cold distance and judgment in the room. Victoria Harrington, Jack's mother, was the most vocal opponent of the marriage. A refined woman accustomed to luxury and status, Victoria placed great value on social standing. When she learned that her son was marrying a cafe waitress, she could not hide her outrage. Jack, what are you thinking? She confronted him the night before the wedding. Our family is one of the most prestigious in New York. You're bringing a cafe waitress into our home? Jack met his mother's gaze, his voice calm. You know this is just a contract marriage. After 6 months, it will be over. There's nothing to worry about. Victoria arched an eyebrow, skepticism etched on her face. 6 months is still too long. You need to think about our family's reputation. She doesn't belong in our world. Jack offered no further argument. To him, this was nothing more than a business deal. His mother's feelings, or anyone else's, wouldn't change his plans. The ceremony was swift and cold. Jack stood beside Amelia, but they exchanged little more than polite nods. As Amelia recited her vows, she stole a glance at Jack, but his gaze remained distant and indifferent. Throughout the reception, Amelia felt like an outsider. No one truly welcomed her. After the wedding, Amelia officially moved into Jack's estate. The grand house was vast but hollow. Each morning, Jack left early and returned late at night. Amelia spent most of her time alone, reading or wandering through the expansive garden. Whenever she walked down the long hallways, she felt the weight of Victoria's gaze lingering behind her. You know, Amelia, Victoria's voice broke the silence one afternoon when they crossed paths in the sitting room. You can wear expensive dresses and walk in high heels, but you can't hide your humble origins. Amelia tightened her grip on the teacup but remained silent. She understood her place in the house. Jack is only playing. When this is over, you'll have to leave. Don't get any illusions. Victoria left the room after her cutting remark, leaving Amelia alone in the cavernous space. Beyond the walls of the estate, the gossip spread like wildfire. At high society events, Amelia became the subject of whispers and idle chatter. I heard she was a cafe waitress. Who would have thought Jack would stoop so low? It must be her looks. What else could someone like her offer? Amelia overheard such remarks at a charity gala organized by Jack. Despite the murmurs, she maintained her composure. As for Jack, he paid little attention to the gossip. To him, this was a temporary transaction. But what troubled Amelia was that Jack never defended her, even if he didn't support the rumors. Whenever someone mocked their marriage, Jack merely smirked and dismissed it. They can say what they want, as long as you ignore it, Jack remarked one evening, when Amelia confronted him about the whispers. But how could she ignore it? Despite the disdain, Amelia remained optimistic. Each day she fulfilled her duties as Jack's wife. She accompanied him to events, smiled, and made small talk with guests. In her spare time, Amelia continued participating in charity work, something she had done long before this arrangement. Amelia knew that even if this marriage was just an act, she wanted to leave behind something meaningful once the contract ended. Just 6 months, she reminded herself whenever she felt overwhelmed. I just need to hold on until then. No matter what was said, Amelia kept smiling, because she knew that one's worth wasn't determined by their background, but by how they faced adversity. Chapter 4. The Crisis in Amelia's Emergence. A thick curtain of rain shrouded New York on Monday morning, mirroring the somber atmosphere at Harrington Tech's headquarters. Jack stood by the window, gazing at the bustling traffic below. Since the financial crisis erupted, Harrington Tech's stock had plummeted without reprieve. The quarterly financial report revealed unprecedented losses, pushing Jack to the brink of collapse. We lost 2 major shareholders this morning, Mark, Jack's assistant, announced with a tense voice as he entered the office. They've pulled their investments and severed all ties. Jack nodded, though the exhaustion on his face was impossible to hide. If this continues, we'll be bankrupt in 3 months, Mark added, his eyes clouded with concern. Jack crossed his arms, leaning against his desk. I'll find a way. No one will let this company fail. But even he wasn't sure if he had the strength to turn the tide. That evening, in the spacious living room of the estate, Amelia noticed the weight in Jack's every step. He sat in silence, a glass of red wine swirling in his hand, untouched. Jack, is there anything I can do to help? Amelia asked gently. Jack looked up at her, his gaze softening slightly. No, this is my problem. Don't worry about it. Amelia smiled faintly, but she could see Jack struggling under the heavy burden. Even if their marriage was a contract, she couldn't ignore the pressure he faced. A few days later, a large charity gala was held at the Grand Manhattan Hotel. Initially, Jack had no intention of attending, but with the faint hope of finding new investors, he reluctantly agreed. Will you come with me? Jack asked as he prepared to leave. Amelia blinked in surprise. It was the first time Jack had ever invited her to accompany him to an important event. Of course, she replied with a smile. Amelia wore a simple navy blue evening gown, elegant yet understated. As she linked arms with Jack and entered the Grand Hotel ballroom, all eyes turned toward them. Isn't that the cafe girl? Someone whispered. Who does she think she is? Standing next to Jack Harrington. Amelia heard the murmurs, but her smile never wavered. She knew her place, yet she felt no shame. The gala buzzed with lively conversations as businessmen and major investors mingled, discussing upcoming ventures. Jack moved through the room, shaking hands and engaging guests, but things weren't going as he hoped. When he returned to their table, his frustration was evident. No one's interested. They're avoiding me, he muttered. Amelia placed a comforting hand on his. Don't worry, there might still be an opportunity. As the words left her lips, Amelia's gaze shifted to the far side of the room. There, standing near the bar, was a familiar face, Henry Thompson, one of the largest investors in the tech industry. Amelia rose from her seat, her smile bright. Mr. Thompson, it's wonderful to see you again. Henry turned, his eyes lighting up at the sight of Amelia. Amelia, what a pleasant surprise. What brings you here? Both Jack and those nearby looked stunned by their familiarity. I'm here with my husband, Jack Harrington, Amelia said, gesturing toward Jack, who approached with curiosity etched across his face. Henry's smile broadened as he extended a hand to Jack. I didn't know you were married to Amelia. She's the young woman who helped me when I had an accident during a charity event last month. If not for her, things could have turned out far worse. Jack glanced at Amelia, visibly taken aback. He had no idea she had crossed paths with Henry before. You're a lucky man to have a wife like her, Henry added warmly. That evening, Henry offered to invest significantly in Harrington Tech. Thanks to Amelia's connection, Jack's company narrowly escaped bankruptcy. As they left the gala, Jack held Amelia's hand a little tighter than usual. You saved me. And this company, he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Amelia smiled. I just did what I could. For the first time, Jack saw Amelia as more than just a struggling cafe waitress. She was a source of hope and strength, even in his darkest moments. Chapter 5. Feelings Begin to Bloom. After the charity gala, Jack couldn't stop thinking about what had transpired. For years, as the head of Harrington Tech, he had always prioritized logic and business interests above all else. But Amelia, the contract wife he once considered just a deal, had begun to shift everything he believed in. Jack started noticing the small things Amelia did. He realized she didn't care about the glamour of wealth or the benefits of being married to him. Amelia remained as humble and simple as ever. Every morning she woke up early and prepared breakfast for the staff in the kitchen, despite them being accustomed to serving their employers. "You don't have to do that, Amelia," Jack said when he saw her carrying a plate of pastries to the dining room. "I just enjoy doing it," she replied with a gentle smile. Jack began to see that Amelia was entirely different from the women he had known before. While others were drawn to his fortune and status, Amelia seemed indifferent to it all. In the following days, Jack started spending more time with Amelia. They participated in charity work together, something Jack had never considered before. On one occasion, they visited an orphanage on the outskirts of the city to donate and help renovate the facilities. Jack vividly remembered the moment Amelia knelt down, gently fixing a boy's coat. Her eyes shone with warmth and compassion, something Jack had never witnessed in anyone else. "I've never seen you this happy," Jack remarked as they sat together after the event. "The kids remind me of my sister. I think that if I can help someone, even just a little, I should." Amelia smiled, watching the children play. Jack didn't say anything, but a strange feeling welled up inside him. It was no longer pity or responsibility born from their marriage contract. It was genuine admiration. As time passed, their relationship grew closer. Jack began to realize that being around Amelia brought him peace. The stress of work and the pressure from his family seemed to fade whenever he heard her laughter echo through the house. In the evenings, they often sat together in the living room. Jack, who used to spend hours handling work, now found himself reading beside Amelia. She would share stories about her charity work or amusing events from her day. "I never thought I'd enjoy sitting quietly and listening to someone like this," Jack joked one evening. "Maybe because you've been living in a noisy world for too long," Amelia teased, her voice light but warm. Jack smiled, acknowledging that Amelia had become an irreplaceable part of his life. Still, Jack couldn't bring himself to admit his feelings. Many nights he sat in his office, staring out the window, thinking about Amelia. He wondered if she felt the same, or if it was just his one-sided emotions. "It's just a contract," Jack reminded himself, but his heart disagreed. Amelia wasn't someone he could easily let go of. One evening, as Amelia tended to the garden behind the estate, Jack stood at a distance, watching quietly. The sight of her in the glow of the sunset captivated him. Jack knew he had truly fallen for her. "I can't keep standing on the sidelines in her life," Jack thought, though he lacked the courage to say it aloud. Even if he couldn't confess his feelings yet, Jack realized one thing. He was willing to do whatever it took to keep Amelia by his side. Not because of the contract, but because she was the one who brought meaning to his life. Are you still following this story on Soul Stories? Comment Coca-Cola to let us know you're with us. Chapter 6. Contract Expiration and Separation. Victoria Harrington met with Amelia privately in the luxurious living room of the Harrington estate. Her cold gaze tracked Amelia's every movement. The late afternoon sun cast a faint glow through the large windows, but it wasn't enough to ease the tension between the two women. "Do you think you can stay with Jack forever?" Victoria's voice was low but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. Amelia sat upright, hands resting on her lap, trying to maintain her composure. Her heart pounded, but she kept her expression calm. "I never thought I would stay with him long-term, ma'am," Amelia replied softly but firmly. Victoria chuckled lightly, though there was no warmth in her smile. "You may think that, but my son doesn't. Jack isn't a naive boy anymore. He's the head of Harrington Tech, and his marriage can't be based on pity or a fleeting whim." Amelia's hands tightened slightly, feeling the weight of Victoria's words. "You know this relationship is just a contract. When the time is up, I expect you to honor the agreement and leave. Don't put Jack in a difficult position." Victoria's words cut through Amelia like a knife. She knew she didn't belong in Jack's world. No matter how much they had shared, the gap between them felt insurmountable. Time passed faster than Amelia expected. The final day of the contract arrived. Jack seemed oblivious to the change. He continued working late, greeting her with a smile as usual when he returned. But Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that her departure was imminent. The next morning, Amelia left the Harrington estate before the sun fully rose. On Jack's desk, she left a letter, one that held her truest emotions. Jack, by the time you read this, I will have already left. Our contract has ended, and I know I shouldn't stay any longer. I want to thank you for these past months. At first, I thought this was just a simple transaction. I would help you with your public image, and you would help my family through hard times. But over time, I realized that being with you meant far more than I expected. Jack, you are the kind of man I never thought I'd meet in this lifetime. Your resilience, kindness, and the way you treat others are things I deeply admire. I know I don't belong in your world. The differences between us are too great, and I don't want to be the person standing in your way. Your mother was right. I'm not worthy, but I will treasure these memories forever. Thank you for everything, Jack. Amelia. When Jack returned and read the letter, he froze. He had grown used to Amelia's presence, her smile, the gentle way she had quietly woven herself into his life. The estate now felt hollow, and Jack realized that what he had lost wasn't just a contract wife, but the one woman who had brought him true happiness. Jack sat on the sofa, his fingers tracing over the lines of the letter again and again. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. Amelia was gone, but Jack knew that if he didn't find her, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Chapter 7. A Happy Ending. Jack Harrington searched everywhere, from the small cafes where Amelia used to work to the charity center she often visited. But she was nowhere to be found. Each passing day made his mansion feel colder and emptier than ever. Where is Amelia? The question echoed relentlessly in his mind, leaving Jack restless and unsatisfied. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves covered the streets of northern New York, Jack received a tip from one of Amelia's old friends. She's volunteering at an orphanage upstate. She goes there every weekend. Jack didn't hesitate for a moment. He left his office immediately, driving through the windy, leaf-strewn roads. When his car pulled up in front of the orphanage gates, he could hear the laughter of children ringing out from inside. Amelia sat among a group of children, reading to them with a bright smile. Jack's eyes settled on her, the woman he had let slip away. This time, he wasn't going to let that happen again. From a distance, Amelia noticed Jack. The smile on her lips faltered slightly. She stood, making her way toward him, her eyes filled with surprise. Jack, what are you doing here? Jack gazed at her for a long moment before speaking. I came to take you home. Amelia lowered her head, a faint but bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. Jack, I left for a reason. We don't belong together. Jack stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. You left because the contract ended. But Amelia, I'm not here because of the contract. I'm here because I love you. Jack's words left Amelia stunned. I once thought my life was perfect. Money, power, and status. But when you left, I realized none of that meant anything without you by my side. I don't care about status, your past, or where you came from. The only thing I care about is you, Amelia. Amelia looked into Jack's eyes, seeing the sincerity she once thought she would never find. Jack, are you sure? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Jack reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, dropping to one knee before Amelia. I lost you once, and I won't let it happen again. Amelia Dawson, will you marry me? Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, slowly streaming down her cheeks. She looked at Jack for a long moment before nodding softly. Yes, Jack, I will. The children cheered and clapped around them, but for Jack, the only thing he could feel at that moment was the overwhelming joy of having Amelia back in his life. It wasn't easy for Victoria Harrington to accept her son's decision. You could have any woman you want. Why Amelia? She asked, her disapproval still evident. Jack took Amelia's hand, his voice calm but firm. Because she makes me happy, Mother. No one else can do that. Victoria remained silent for a long moment. Seeing the happiness in her son's eyes, she realized her protest no longer held any weight. Finally, she stepped toward Amelia, her voice softer than during their previous encounters. I just want my son to be happy. If you can give him that, I am willing to accept you. Amelia smiled, sensing the sincerity in Victoria's tone. Thank you. I promise I won't let Jack down. Amelia was not only the woman who had saved Harrington Tech from the brink of collapse, but she was also the person who brought light and genuine love into Jack's life. Their story spread across New York's financial circles. People no longer whispered about Amelia's humble background, but instead spoke of how she had transformed Jack, a cold, distant millionaire, into a man who cherished love and the simple joys of life. And Jack knew that no matter how many obstacles they faced, true love would always find a way to overcome them. Thank you for following this story. Please rate it from 1 to 5 stars, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Soul Stories channel.